Let's not mince words here. Supergiant Games is fucking awesome. Bam! How's that for an opening statement? Ever since they charmed the hell out of me with their original release of Bastion, which remains to this day one of my favorite games ever made, they just kept making masterpiece after masterpiece, and yes, that includes Pyre, and yes, I know it's a divisive game. But you know what, everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I loved it personally. You can take note of their masterful artwork that evokes the handcrafted attention to detail look of classic paintings, but using modern techniques and tools to bring them to the digital era, or perhaps you might instead focus on their soundtracks that are often hard to describe genre-wise, hard to categorize due to their mishmash of all kinds of genres and instruments, but turns what could be a mess instead in a laser-focused mix that integrates the sounds in a way that makes the final result sound like the most natural fit of them all, not to mention highly addictive. There's simply no denying Supergiant are masters of their craft. And is this enthusiasm in joining unlikely ideas and bringing the old to modern sensibilities that makes them such a perfect fit to bring the Greek myth to modern times with the production of a game like Hades? Now, full disclosure, Hades is still in early access, and normally I would rather wait until a product was out of it and had a full 1.1 release and all that stuff before making a review, but after having played the Steam release and compared to the previous patches that slowly built up the game structure, I'm confident that unless Supergiant pulls a massive surprise out of nowhere, which, you know, considering they're Supergiant, they just might. But unless they do that, I am confident that the game will remain 90% the same from now until release. All that's left is polishing and adding extra cherries to the already existing ice creams, so I think a review now will still be very relevant until, well, forever, and the sooner I put word out about the game, the better I will feel about it. But, assuming they do any major changes, I will do an additional review about the changes they've made and the extra content they've added. Is it really extra content if it's not even fully released yet? Don't think too hard about that. I will do a review if anything significant comes out. That's the point. So, with all of those disclaimers and information out of the way, let's get right into things. What is Hades anyway? Hades is a roguelike, and yes, I hate them too. Normally, I'm the kind of person that prefers to lose as little progress as possible on each death or other game overs times. So the idea of restarting a game from scratch upon each death sounds like absolute nightmare to me. But hear me out, cause once in a blue moon, something special comes out of their genre that even a complete casual like me can enjoy. Anyway, back on track. Hades is a roguelite action-adventure top-down kind of game about Zagreus, the son of Hades, the god of the underworld, which, by the way, is voiced by the god of voiceovers himself, Logan Cunningham. Hades' voice, not Zagreus. Zagreus, you see, was born and lived his entire life in the underworld, until one day he decides to leave it for the surface. There's only one problem. To prevent souls and whatever else Hades hates from escaping to the surface, the underworld was built as a giant, ever-shifting labyrinth filled with traps and dangerous enemies that will utterly destroy anything that tries to get past them. Zagreus doesn't care. He promptly goes forward within the very first seconds of the game, and with you in control of him, he promptly dies not long after his journey began. That is not the end of his story, however, because soon afterwards, he reappears on a pool of blood in front of his father's throne room. That pool being the entrance to the underworld, from which all spirits come from, so of course he would rise from there after dying. After that, he spares a few choice words for his father and whoever else the player wishes to speak to inside the House of Hades. Before going inside his room, slightly upgrading his base abilities with darkness collected from his previous run, He then chooses a weapon to wield and a keepsake to equip, and off he goes, trying to see if he can escape from the underworld in his next attempt. Spoiler alert, he probably doesn't. And that's the basic structure of Hades. Fight, die, use stuff you collected to upgrade yourself, and off you go to die one more time. It's not a particularly new tale for roguelites, but it's all about the not so obvious touches at first that the devs used that makes it a much more friendly, intriguing, and overall fun approach to the genre. Let us begin by exploring the weapons. Each weapon completely changes Zagreus' approach to combat. You will start with a basic sword, but soon you will unlock a bow, a spear, and even a shield. Or, my favorite of them all that I'm using on this very video, a fucking gun. Yeah. Well, each weapon favors different approaches and are tailored towards different playstyles, plus they can evolve in any number of different ways during a playthrough, so experimentation is recommended. I personally prefer ranged weapons to avoid chances of getting hit, but the payoff of more melee-focused weapons are often a higher DPS that can lead to shorter encounters. And that's not even getting into the shield, which is the only weapon capable of just straight up blocking an attack before unleashing a counter-offensive. And you can even upgrade weapons into different aspects that will further specialize them. It's all pretty great stuff, and you are sure to find something to suit you. Another element that's important to the gameplay that you can customize in your home base, as well as between levels, are keepsakes. They are the only equipment Zagreus can use outside of his weapon, and you can only equip one at a time, so you have to be careful about your choices. They can do a number of useful things, from increasing maximum health to increasing your chances of meeting certain gods. And speaking of gods, they certainly are the stars of the show. So with that smooth segue, let's get more into the meat of the game. The game takes places on the various levels of the underworld that, just like the premise and roguelite conventions say, are ever shifting. So every run has you running through a different set of rooms, sometimes giving a choice between rooms with the help of a reward preview in the form of an orb with an icon on the door. And if I wasn't clear, what I'm trying to say is sometimes you only have one path, and other times you have many different paths, and you can choose them based on the door you take. But the rooms themselves that are behind the doors are still always completely randomly generated, and the rewards can offer you little information on what exactly you're going to face. Sometimes they come with a little extra skull icon next to them to showcase that they are extra hard compared to the other room you could take. So it's always a strategic decision of risk versus reward. This reward could be the one that can make your run incredibly smooth, but it might be behind a hard door, and the doors themselves always hold surprises. So picking the correct room whenever you have a choice is an essential part of the game. The main reward you will probably want to find in a lot of these rooms are essentially orbs that allows you to communicate with the gods of the Olympus, who are Zagreus' distant relatives. They are all relatively less bastardly than their mythological counterparts, and are more than willing to lend their aid during Zagreus' quest in the forms of booms. The ability kind of boom, not the explosion kind of boom, though sometimes they may overlap. Each boom taking the form of an ability they bestow upon Zagreus, which slowly but surely adds up and informs his build and playstyle. Finding gods is usually a completely random chance, and when you find them, they may offer you a choice between 3 booms, but you always have to keep in mind that each god has much more than just 3 booms to give, and the ones you get to choose between are randomized, so you shouldn't always count on finding that cool ability you found in your previous run, even if you end up finding the same gods. You do get some degree of control over the random number generator, however, or random number god, depending on who you ask. Random number god. Oh god, I missed the chance to make a pun here. Anyway, you do have some control over the RNG, as certain keepsakes allow you to meet up certain gods more often and get more chances to pick from their hairy selection of blessings, which are usually better. At the end of the day though, you still have to mix and match unexpected abilities and deal with the cards you've been dealt. But even then, Hades plays much nicer than other roguelites. Other roguelites might randomly spawn a hellish combination of enemies, or randomly give you cursed equipment that is just straight up detrimental to your character, or any other number of nasty random events that could happen. But Hades, perhaps due to its relative simplicity compared to some roguelites, never does that. Sure, you might not find exactly what you're looking for, and sure, you might end up fighting armored enemies, which essentially are powered up versions of the enemies that have double the health bar, but those are all easily manageable missteps when you put your mind to it. Most roguelites are about balancing the moments of bad luck with what you got during your moments of good luck, assuming of course you aren't having a particularly bad run. But Hades is more about how to deal with being more lucky or less lucky during a run, since every time you get an upgrade, they are almost universally make your character better, even if they're not the exact build you want. So in the end, you still feel like a lucky guy. You just hope you can get more lucky next time, rather than the absolute miserable feel some roguelites leave you after a completely horrible run. Yeah. This means your ability to manage enemies and play with your predefined weapons moveset are much more emphasized than any random divine rolls you might make, which means luck won't really save you if you don't put in the effort, but bad luck won't screw you over badly either. This makes for a much less chaotic environment for a roguelite, which will probably turn off fans of the more hardcore bad luck and really screw you over variants of the genre, but it will probably please everyone else who want to give this a try and might be fearing a very harsh difficulty curve. Well, this game has a very smooth difficulty curve for a roguelite, so you can try this one without fear. And going back to the gods, they are not the only characters you will interact with in this game, as you can find all sorts of other mythological figures during your journey that are also willing to trade words and give you all sorts of helpful items through your quest. Which brings me to the story. The story doesn't reset every time you die, no. Just like your upgrade progress, it keeps going even after your death, and just like your upgrade progress, you have to review it little by little, with every conversation being over after a few lines, if even that, as the gods you meet during runs will mostly only say one sentence before giving you a choice of boon. But every line acknowledges your progress. The dialogue changes depending on what you have done since the last time you met each character. It changes depending on your weapon of choice, and where you find the character next time. And even bosses have unique dialogue referencing all the times you kill them, or more likely, got killed by them. It's a consistent world that requires you to experience it little by little over repeating runs, which is what makes the story so fitting for a roguelike. And, like all other games before it from the same devs, makes the story unique, engaging, and worth experiencing. Especially since, like I mentioned before, the gods here act a lot less like a bunch of divine jerks, and more like very sympathetic, charismatic people who just so happen to hold immense amount of powers. It helps each god has their own gorgeously unique portrait that portrays them in a way that carries their powerful essences while still painting them on a light that I've never seen quite before. And let's be honest, that's quite a feat for a pantheon as well trod as the Greek one. The soundtrack is also great, capable of delivering peaceful, ethereal vibes fitting of a place like the Underworld, while still kicking it up to high-octane hard rock when it comes time to deliver the pain to a boss, or get the pain delivered to, you get the idea. And after on the same track too. It also makes for great listening even outside of the games, and you don't even have to take my word for it, since it is completely available in Supergiant's very own YouTube channel. So even if you don't plan to pick the game up, please take some time to check it out. And when it comes to the environment, like level design and game design that is level related, this game is no slouch either. The game starts on a place full of indestructible pillars and bottomless pits that you can maneuver around or dash across in order to confuse and dodge enemy attacks, plus to manipulate their movement and range, but it eventually evolves into dangerous rooms filled with lava where dashing like a madman quickly gets punished with heat damage. And then as you finally get comfortable, you ascend to a place with walls filled with armors that are more than happy to stab you should you attack them accidentally, and energy spears being fired from every direction. Add explosive barrels that may randomly appear on any room on any level, plus sub-bosses that can pop up in the room rotation when you least expect, and you got a world that keeps you on your toes at every turn, where you have to master the controls without exaggerating on them if you want to keep your health bar up. The reward you get for conquering all of those dangers is of course quite a treat. Beyond the boons you can get from the gods, you can also get divine pomegranates that upgrade each individual boon, a hammer that rewards you with a weapon upgrade, jewels to invest in underworld renovations that put new beneficial rooms into rotation, nectar that you can give to the gods in exchange for keepsakes, and there are even mysterious chaos rooms you can find, where you can sacrifice a little bit of your health to enter, and then deliberately give yourself a curse for a certain number of rooms in order to unlock a special blessing you can get anywhere else after you survive through the curse's effects. And of course, there are the Charon rooms, where you can meet the infamous boatman himself and buy cool gadgets in exchange for coins. So yeah, he's basically the shop room. There's probably even more stuff and variations, but this is just off the top of my head. So believe me when I say this game has a lot of content. Content that you will keep improving and specializing with the multiple runs you have to do as you slowly experience everything the game has to throw at you bit by bit. And oh boy, is that all I had to say? Yeah, I think so. Well then, it's time for another abrupt ending. And so yeah, that's what I think of Hades. I think it's a great game that will undoubtedly go down as one of 2020's greatest games as soon as it reaches a full release. And it's another golden mark on Supergiant's history. I hope this review clarifies what to expect from this game and helps you make an informed decision on it, aka just buy it. You'll like it. What, even with all of that you're afraid it's too hard and roguelite-ish? Well, they added in an easy mode in the latest patch. So yeah, oh, maybe you think the game looks too easy. Well, they added in a hard mode too. And yes, I am sorry to completely shield the game, I just couldn't find another place to put the difficulty news on. Sorry for that, sorry for everything, K thinks bye.
I'll make every strike count. Barge of Death, you're here.
So, you've stuck around, huh? Well, I guess I can give you some unscripted tips. If you main the gun like I did, one of the best boons you can get, though it doesn't seem that way at first, it might not seem that way at first for other weapons, is the Dionysius boons. And I will say why that is. At first I was enchanted by the Zeus boons because they emitted lightning on every direction, and hitting multiple enemies at the same time is especially useful in rooms where you get a bunch of enemies to fight with you. You get a high quantity of them. And some boss battles can also devolve in a giant clusterfuck of low bad enemies coming at you from every direction while you just try to survive the boss. So hitting multiple enemies sound useful, but Dionysius got like poison damage. He got a poison damage boon, and he can attach that to your attack. And poison damage can be stacked multiple times. So when you got something like the gun that can fire very fast, but each individual hit doesn't do that much damage, especially when you can upgrade it to get more ammo or even make the attack faster, each attack still does relatively low damage compared to other weapons, but if you get the Dionysius boom for poison on your attack, boy oh boy, basically each attack stacks more poison, and poison does damage for like 5 seconds. So you have to constantly keep stacking it, which the guns allows you very easily. You can end up with, I don't know how many stacks right now, sorry for that, I should have paid more attention, I realized that considering how many times I use this build. But basically you can just deal a lot of damage, and since each individual bullet, and you can fire them so fast, keep stacking more and more poison damage, you can just stack poison damage like crazy on everything. And it's amazing, and I really love this poison build. Another thing I love using with this build is the swords when you dash, because I think almost every dash boom is really hard to aim at enemies, but the sword you get from Ares on your dash basically leaves a giant sword that keeps doing damage while it's active. So basically every time you start dodging enemies, you leave behind you a trail of swords, and when they try to get near you, they take massive damage. And another one I really enjoy are Artemis guided arrows, where every time you hit an enemy, you also shoot sort of a heat-seeking, sort of an enemy-seeking arrow that automatically zones in on the enemies. And Ares on dash and the arrow on special is good, I think. And poison on attack, wow, that's my favorite build of the game. And I hope this story showcases you all of the different kinds of builds you can do in this game. You can get Aphrodite to put charm on your attack, on your special attack, so enemies start fighting for you. You can also get godly power that once you charge your bar, you can unleash the power of the god himself as an extra attack. That is one of the few things that is not actually attached to your basic weapon moveset of the weapon you chose. But yeah, there's a lot of variety on builds without going too crazy on things that makes it completely unbalanced, like I mentioned before, but there is enough. And I hope this little tale and tip helps you when you start the game and you start choosing. Good luck.
You touch me and I shall have your head.